Hey everybody, Sam here again with the next instalment in this mixing series. If you remember, in the last episode we managed to get our mix to the point where we got all the instruments in, our drums are up, our bass and our guitars all there in the mix. In this session we're going to be focusing on the vocals. We're going to be looking at lead vocal processing, what we're doing with the double track. We're also going to take a look at the backing vocals, thinking about how we're processing all those elements individually and together as well. So let's dive straight into it. Let's just refresh our memory on where we got to. So here's our mix up to this point. Sounding good. So let's get straight into our lead vocal then. So here's our lead vocal in isolation, just so we got a bass line.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth.
Okay, there she is. So the very first thing that I'm going to do on this vocal, and this is something that I do on basically every single vocal I work with, is some subtractive EQ. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that vocal and I'm going to look for frequencies that I don't like and I'm going to remove them. Now on this EQ here you can see that I'm high passing at around 180 Hertz. I'm rolling off the high end as well, and then I've got all these little bands, but all of these bands are actually dynamic bands, so they're only operating when there's frequency content there. So I'm going to leave that up there, but actually I'm going to sort of take you through the process of how I would come up with those choices. So let us pull up both of these. Okay, so there's the one that we've got, just so we can see there as a reference. I'm not really going to look at that. I'm going to use this fresh EQ, which I've put in front of it in the chain. So the first thing that I'm going to do is look for a high pass, okay? So I'm going to put my high pass filter on, and then I'm going to look for the fundamental frequency of the vocals. So that's going to be sort of the most prominent, lowest frequency before it starts rolling off and just having some sort of garbage below it. And I'm going to use that as my point to start my high pass filter roll off.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
So it's around about here, about 280, right? That's where the fundamental is. So I'm going to bring up this high pass filter until I'm sort of getting towards that point, but not losing any of that content, and roll off from there.
And I couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to...
Cool. So, to the ear, it's basically unnoticeable. But what we're doing is we're cleaning up all of that nonsense that's below this high pass filter. And if we have a little look at the representation of the frequencies in this wave, well, we can see the sort of before and after in this analyzer.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to...
So all of this stuff that's appearing down here in the fainter grey, that's now gone. We've cut that out, which is great. I would do a similar thing on the high end.
Truth to...
Just very gently, just taking off some of the real wispy nonsense stuff. But then here's the big thing, right? And I'm going to look for resonant frequencies that are poking too much, that I don't want to hear, and I'm going to start pulling them out. Now, the way that I do this is to create a node, make the Q really narrow, and then I'm going to solo that band out and start sweeping it until I hear a frequency that's louder than the rest of the content there.
And I know truth.
Little one there. Let's find another one. Definitely some resonance there. And a little bit there. And I'll go through, all of the content and find anything that I feel is resonant, is pokey, and I'll create a band there. And then, rather than being, really brutal and going, right, let's cut that band and then it's gone completely, what I actually do is I say, no, let's make this a dynamic band and use the dynamic aspect of this EQ so that when that frequency is present, it's going to pull it out. But when it's not, it will just remain in there, which is a more natural way of doing it.
And I know you could.
So I do the whole thing, and then I've ended up with this sort of representation here. So I can get rid of this EQ now. Let's just lose that. Oh, that was the wrong one. Lose that completely. And here's what I've got.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
So it's just smoothing things. It's just getting rid of some of the harshness of the recording, which is helping a lot, making the signal kind of cleaner. So then, next in my signal chain, I've got Slate Digital's virtual mix rack going on here, and I've got a number of processes going on. So the first thing that I'm doing is using some sort of preamp emulation to get some saturation into the vocal signal. So this is adding some additional harmonic content to make the vocal a bit distorted. It's going to help it carry more in the mix. So let's A/B that. We're going to turn on this saturator here.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
So giving me some warmth. Then I'm compressing. I've got this beautiful LA2A emulation. Now this is a really smooth, really natural sounding compressor on vocals. So it's a sort of a slow attack release kind of compressor, which is renowned for making vocals sound amazing. So let's turn that on.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
Really natural, really, really smooth. I've then got this Neve style EQ going on, so I'm checking in my high pass again just in case. I'm rolling off some of the lows around 80 hertz, and then I'm pushing around 5k there or thereabouts with a bit of a high shelf as well.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
Brightness, presence, energy definitely going on there. I'm then compressing again, so compressing in series, one after the other, with this FG116 FET style compressor. So this is focusing more on the transient content. It's a fast attack and not so much a fast release, but a faster attack with a 4:1 ratio. So it's not going super hard, but it's just looking to get a bit more control over the transient content.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
Cool. And then I'm actually trimming that up.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to.
Beautiful. So there we go. That's the stuff that's on my lead vocal channel. I then, however, have created these 3 aux sends within my vocal bus. So 15, 16, 17 here, 15, 16, 17. And I've got 3 different processes that I'm applying on these sends. So the first one is it's a delay plugin, but I'm using it to thicken the vocal. So I've got a really quite a fast delay on the left and right, which is it's panned out of center. It's about halfway left and right, and the color is quite bright. So it's gonna literally make the vocal sound wider, thicker. Let's bring that in context here.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
Okay, quite subtle. Obviously, I've already got that dialed in. If we look at the dialed amount here, so I'm tastefully down at sort of 13.4 dB. But if I bring that up to Unity,
and I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
That's the effect that we're getting out of it. Obviously, when you've got a lot, it's quite unnatural. For some things that might sound great, but I'm just tastefully blending that in just to enrich and just to thicken that vocal up. I was down at sort of 13.2, 13.4.
And I know.
If you're not aware of the sends on faders option, by the way, it's a beautiful thing. You can put any of your aux sends onto the fader there, so turn it on, and then in the drop down select whichever bus it is that you want to put on the fader. So next up, I've got my delay, which is this one here, bus 16. And what's going on here? So again, I'm using the repeater, but I've got a longer, more noticeable delay. So quarter note left and right on the delay. I'm using the filter quite a lot, so I'm filtering low end around whatever that is. I don't know, 80, 100 hertz. Filtering the highs around about 5k, actually dulling the color so it's less bitey, it's more kind of warm, and again bringing in the mix from the side so it's about halfway out. Again, let's sort of show you that in full effect, and then I'll dial it back down to the amount that I have, around 10.5 dB.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but...
Now that's quite distracting initially, but what I tend to love doing on vocal delay sends and reverb sends is after I've put my process on, I will then put a compressor on, which I'll sidechain to the original sound source. So in this instance, I've set the sidechain input to my lead vocal, and I'm using that lead vocal to compress the delay, which is going to get that delay out of the way whilst the lead vocal is present, and then allow it to come in afterwards. So listen to that in context.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but I just ignore all the signs.
So it's just getting it out of the way a little bit. Obviously, in the mix, that sounds much more, I guess, suitable. What we'll do is we'll listen to all these processes in context of the mix in just a moment. Then my third send is my reverb. So here it is on bus 17. Now I'm using this TSAR from Softtube, which I'm really liking at the moment. Let's have a little listen to this reverb. Here you go.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth.
Okay, I'm then EQing that, so I'm high passing, low passing, and then bringing out a bunch of the kind of presence up here.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth.
And then same deal, I'm sidechain compressing that.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
Cool. So let's have a listen to that lead vocal in the mix, shall we? Here it is.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but I just ignore all the signs. I'm not gonna wait.
Nice. Now, on the double track vocal, I'm applying exactly the same dynamic frequencies, the same subtractive EQ, because it's the same vocal, it's the same vocalist, it's the same mic, it's, you know, all the same environment. So I'm using the same moves there, and then pretty much the same chain, but I've gone in and slightly tweaked these settings according to the performance, but that's all very similar. I am then using these same sends, but I'm dialing in slightly different amounts. So I'm going a little heavier on the reverb, I'm a little less on the delay, and a little more on the thickener for the double track. And then I'm blending those things in underneath the lead vocal. I don't want it to sound like there's clearly two voices. I'm just using that double track to support that lead vocal. So let's bring that in.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
So it's just supporting that lead vocal, helping it to cut a little bit more in the mix. Then on my whole vocal bus, my lead vocal bus, I should say, I've got these couple of little boosts, and I'll tell you what I'm doing here. I'm actually using my lead vocal to work sort of with/against my guitar bus here. So what you'll see is that I've got, like I did previously, my sidechain inputs set to, on my lead vocal bus, in this instance, the guitar bus, and on the guitar bus, the lead vocal bus. I'm then using the two things to find some frequencies that were clashing and to dynamically bring out these bands in the vocal to help it cut through the mix more. So I found these three frequencies that were clashing in those parts, so in the guitars and the vocals. I'm dynamically pulling those out according to when the lead vocal is present, which will then allow them to come back in the guitars when there's no vocal. So I'm not losing them from the guitars forever, just when the vocal's in. Only very, very gently. I don't want to hear it really obviously. And conversely, in the lead vocal, I'm also putting a bit more of those frequencies in. So let's just A-B with and without these two EQs on. In fact, let's just hear the guitars and the vocals. Let's take these off.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but I just ignore all the signs. I'm not gonna wait for another heartbreak. And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
To me, that's making a massive, massive difference. You know, it's really helping that vocal to come through those guitars in a really, really nice and pleasant way. It still sounds natural, but it's just getting those guitars out of the way so that the vocal can come through. Then I'm using Gullfoss, which is a beautiful, intelligent EQ, to just tame any harshness that I've missed any harshness that I've missed in the high end. So I'm focusing from about 600 hertz up to about 15. I'm not looking at any of the low frequency content at all. So let's just stick this on.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but I just ignore all the signs.
It's just smoothing things very nicely for me in a natural way that is not it's not aggressive, it's not harsh, it's just naturally kind of smoothing those vocals for me, which I love. And then I'm just trimming a bit with some gain again. So here is that, and there's my lead vocals all done. So let's put them in context. Now I'm sure you're thinking at the moment, hang on a minute, they're too quiet in the mix. And yes, they are, you're quite right. But that's because in a moment we're going to talk about what this compressor is doing, which is on my vocal bus. So we'll come to that. On the BVs, we're talking pretty similar things. So I've got subtractive EQ, same sort of processes, very similar signal chain. I'm EQing things slightly differently. This is the male vocal, so these things are all slightly different, but you know, same chain, but just applying slightly different amounts of EQ compression according to what the vocal requires. And then I've slightly panned my BVs left and right, so they're clearly a BV rather than a lead vocal, just to get them out of the way of the lead vocal a little bit. Then I'm using very similar sends, slightly different settings, but similar sense. So the thickener on this one is a shorter time, another delay, slightly different processing. It's wider on my BV delay because I want them to be sort of using more of the width of the mix. Again, a vocal. On my delay and my reverb, however, I'm using two sidechain compressors. So I'm sidechaining not just from the male BV that comes in, but also from the female BV that comes in, because I've got these two different backing vocals, the female one and the male one, which alternate. You can see how here I've got the male and then the female, the male and the female. I need to have two different compressors, one with the input set from the male vocal and one from the input set from the female vocal, so that I can use both of these buses, both of these aux sends for these two BVs. So that's my sort of channel strip plug-in chain. I'm then using a channel strip EQ, and I'm basically using this to bring in those BVs so that they're not as prominent as present in the mix. I'm taking some of the lows, taking quite a lot of highs, and then a presence dip here, so that they, you know, they're drawing back in the mix. And this is quite an important step. If you listen to what this does.
And I know.
Tell the truth to save your soul.
Yeah, that's quite significant, and it's pulling that vocal back in the mix. And what that means is it's going to sit underneath the lead vocal more easily. So here's with it off, and then I'll put that on again.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but I just...
That's really helping for me. That's just making it clear that that is a backing vocal and not a lead vocal. Then I've got this lovely compressor. This is from Slate Digital again, and I'm using this to glue those BVs together as some sort of bus compression.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul.
Cool. Then, finally, on my vocal bus, where my lead vocals and my BVs are going, I'm using this Black 76, so this is 1176 compressor model from T-Rax, to glue all of those vocals together. And I love the sound of this compressor. I'm doing it in a very smooth, transient way, so slow attack, fairly slow release. And let's take a look at the gain reduction that I'm getting here.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but I just ignore all the signs. And I'm not gonna wait for another heartbreak.
So it's really, really gentle. You know, mostly I'm getting like 1 dB of gain reduction. It's really soft. It's just, again, smoothing, gluing those things together in the same way that we glued our guitars together, in the same way that we glued our drums together. And then I'm using it to give me a bit more signal, which is going to make it sit really nicely in the mix. So here it is.
And I know you couldn't tell the truth to save your soul. And I know you will lead to my demise, but I just ignore all the signs. And I'm not gonna wait for another heartbreak.
Nice. So let's just have a quick flick between that and our reference track. So here's the Paramore Decode track. Let's just see how we're comparing here.
And I know what I used to know to save your soul. Where we go, you will lead to my demise, but I just can't wait for another
To me, we're well in the ballpark. We're sounding like we're definitely in that right sort of zone where we're trying to mix in a similar style to that Paramore track. So I'm really, really happy with how this is coming on. And for me, that's good to go. That's a mixed track. So the next session is going to be the last one in this little series, and I'm just going to be showing you some final little tricks and things that I do to really make this sound great. We're going to be looking at a quick master on this track and finishing this project off. So there we go. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe for me. If you've got any questions, any comments, as always, stick them down in the comment section below. And I'll be back with the final part in this series for you very, very soon.